Hi, this is Spencer Brown, and I am recording my Module 5 for AEP 800, Utilization of Technology in the Classroom. The first part of this assignment, we were to review 4 different articles or blogs. The first one was Barriers Using Web 2.0 in the 21st century schools. And what it was doing was it was trying to identify why technology can be moving forward so quickly, yet the practice of it in the buildings may not be moving quite so quickly. And so it identified a few things. The first one was lack of time, which you'd be a fool to argue with a teacher about that. But they set up some questions to help a teacher reflect on their time in terms of, do you have a planning period? Is there a certain time that you're duty free? Are you required to come to evening events? And they actually had teachers reply to those online, and it would have been really interesting to see the results of those. I actually went to the site and was unable to find them though. The second one was lack of training. Outside of the obvious, if you're going to try to implement anything, training needs to happen. Technology is different in the way that it can be, it may need fixed at times, and if I don't have any training in how the technology is actually working, I'm really going to struggle trying to get back online when something kicks me off, for lack of better terms, which leads right into the next one. The lack of tech support is a big issue in schools. There's funding issues there, as well as expertise issues. But one thing that they brought up in the article was there's a lot of online free resources that you could pull to use for tech support for a wide variety of things, which I personally have done this, and it has always proved to be pretty successful. Another one is a lack of admin support. An interesting insight the article brought up was bringing an article, Research on Administrative Support for Technology Integration. Just bring that to your principal or post that to somewhere publicly that maybe other staff members would see and kind of get behind you on that. And then the last one is the digital divide. There's the haves and have-nots, but that has become a lot less prevalent with the excessive use of personal devices. The article then ended with a reminder that the idea of technology is a clear objective to create or to harness creativity, collaboration, innovation, and other goals that are fundamental to today's workforce. And it concludes with outlining advantages and disadvantages in such categories and giving some practical advice moving forward. The next article, I believe this one was a blog that we reviewed, was 7 common barriers that obstruct tech adoption in education. Some of them are very similar. Some of them are more unique, like lack of vision. I thought that this one was particularly interesting to me because oftentimes we jump into something because it seems innovative, but we weren't real clear on what we were trying to fix to begin with. The objectives weren't very clear, and if you don't have clear objectives and you're trying to be intentional about change, you're bound to fail. The next one is changing the teacher's role, which is certainly a concern and a barrier in a lot of buildings. This idea of flipped classroom or project-based learning, where you're really putting the student in the driver's seat, has created not only a cognitive dissonance for teachers, but a pedagogical training issue where many teachers haven't been trained in how to do this appropriately, so it can get pretty messy pretty quick. Considering the achievement gap, that goes back to that divide of technology based on where students may live or the demographics of the student. Going to scale is often issues when you may have one teacher who's particularly innovative with something, but scaling that idea up can really cause issues. Thinking beyond textbooks, when we think about, well, we want to move to this more innovative approach, we may need to go outside of textbooks to do so. And in doing that, that becomes an issue of, where am I supposed to get my curriculum? Am I supposed to write it myself? And then the last one is a strong infrastructure, which is obvious. You need a obviously robust Wi-Fi, but you also need training, just like the article previously discussed. And these last 3 bullets come together to form the final point, which is funding. If you want to push something to scale, and if you want to have resources beyond the textbook, and you want to have strong infrastructure, all of those can point to potential funding issues. This next article was particularly interesting. As the title suggests, the digital divide, it was purely about what digital divide still exists in terms of equitable data services. And this alone is cause for some large hurdles as educators from these digitally remote areas or digitally redlining areas, as the article referred to inner city Cleveland. This can create some serious hurdles for teachers in those areas. The final one was just about open education resources. As we've discussed previously, if we really want to move towards a very different pedagogical approach, we are going to be looking outside of our textbooks. And so where do we find evidence-based, well-validated materials? And these open education resources have kind of come to light. A few examples were illustrative mathematics, EL education, and then even some commercial companies, the article mentioned, have started to create hubs for their those they provide services to say, here, come place innovative things that you've done in your classroom here so that you can help refine that practice somewhere else, which I think is a particularly interesting idea. I think what will be interesting to see is how research-based some of these ideas continue to be, or how broad they can start to get. But I would imagine that as the practice becomes more and more common, the practices will become more refined, and the resources themselves will also become more refined. The first question I was supposed to address after these articles was, do I think the digital divide can be resolved? And I would say yes, but I think it will happen naturally. I think while tech continues to improve, wireless capabilities will as well. Right now, I just don't see the competition being there. In some of these areas, they are very remote, so we're talking about a maybe not as great of incentive to get there. However, I think that Robinhood may exist in some of these areas, and you may see people come through and kind of spot clean up some of this divide until it naturally evolves as technology increases. The second one is, what skill sets do I think the 21st century students need for graduation? And I think the first one is critical to mention, is proficiency in core areas. While calculation may not be as imminent in the workforce today, the laws of mathematics go far beyond simply math, and they breach into mathematical thinking. There was a study done in 1985 that over a few years they looked at undergraduate students and looked at how well they performed on graduate exams. And undergraduate mathematicians scored, I believe it was 13.5% higher on average on the LSAT test. I believe it was 12.8 and 13.5 on the GMAT. So you see this transfer of logical understanding from proficiency in mathematics. I think the same is true about someone who can articulate themselves well in their writing and their reading skills. That can translate into some of these areas that we hope to see in 21st century learners. The second one is critical thinking. I think it's absolutely vital to today's workforce. It's important that students understand appropriate lines of logic and that they don't get kind of swept away by the flash. One of my favorite speakers says we're a generation that listens with our eyes and thinks with our feelings. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, I feel that may be fairly correct. And then critical thinking in our creativity and our innovation is going to be really important as you move into a workforce that may largely be automated, and that you're trying to harness more of this technology to take you to greater places. Collaborative and communication skills are huge. Sometimes with this increased technology, we see a lack of communication skills, and students don't always understand how to appropriately advocate for themselves or how to appropriately disagree with someone. And I think that those are going to be really critical skills, and all students in 21st century should acquire that prior to graduation. Digital literacy is an obvious one. It's not going away. And teaching our students how to appropriately harness the digital age and how to move in an appropriate manner and a safe manner is absolutely critical. And then last one is kind of an obvious one. I think work ethic is extremely important. What impact has the global economy had on my personal use of the internet? It's my second nature, right? My email, my banking, my shopping, where I go to get knowledge, everything where I'm getting my master's through, right? It's all through this harnessing of technology and the internet. And so that alone made me reflect on that digital divide and really kind of feel empathetic for some of these areas and think through what that would be like. What technology training do I need right now? I would say I'm fairly fluent with my current skill set. The issue with technology, as this picture kind of denotes, I see clearly the path I'm on, but there's so many other paths that I don't even know about. So there's just so many unknown unknowns. And so as I've evolved in my work with technology, I've consistently just put to practice what I learn and try to be innovative constantly with what I'm learning. Is my school equipped with 21st century technology? I think that a reminder of my job as a Kansas MTSS trainer, I work with a variety of districts. And as I go into districts, it's less about whether the school is equipped in terms of structure, but often it's, are they equipped in terms of proper implementation? Oftentimes the technology aspect is there, but they're still failing to see where they're trying to go, and they kind of have to turn around and say, wait, this is all about still creating these 21st century learners. So am I using the technology to create those skills, or am I making technology the goal itself? The advantage of innovative practices in schools is simple. I think that static schools are dying schools. While populations change, cultures change, standards change, I do not envy an elementary teacher in today's education. The depth of knowledge they have to understand based on standards in so many areas is really a difficult job and a difficult task to ask of them. But our innovations have to be there in order to keep moving with the constantly moving target and keep our schools alive. The disadvantages, however, are sometimes those innovations fail because they're new practice and they may or may not be successful. Going to scale is a really difficult thing when you're the champion of an innovation. It's possible you're aiming at the wrong target. You might think, oh, this is really the issue, and you're innovative and approaching it, and you find out that wasn't the variable that needed change to begin with. And then you may also be discouraged to do so. There's administrators that will simply say, no, we stick to the status quo here. Open your book, page 1. That's where we start, and we finish at the end. So those are obviously some disadvantages of trying to be innovative in schools. The last one is, have I experienced problems with cyberbullying or other inappropriate internet use? And really, I haven't. There's been a couple really small issues in the school that I worked in previously and the schools that I've worked with, but not in terms of big scale issues by any means. So I'll end with just my citation of the study I used regarding undergraduate mathematicians performing well on graduate tests, and that's the conclusion of my video. Thank you for watching.